Most men lose before they even begin, not because they lack talent, but because they cannot stop talking. Every word you speak beyond what is necessary is a leak, and every leak is a loss. In the next 14 minutes, Machiavelli's coldest lesson will show you exactly why the man who thinks less, talks less, and moves in silence always wins. Most men lose before they even begin, not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, but because they cannot stop talking. Every word you speak beyond what is necessary is a leak. Every thought you turn over 10 times instead of once is wasted ammunition. And every move you announce before you make it is a gift to the people who are quietly waiting to use it against you. Machiavelli did not study the men who shouted their plans from the walls. He studied the men who never announced their plans at all. And what he found was so precise and so uncomfortable that most people still refuse to accept it 500 years later. The men who won were almost never the loudest. They were the most disciplined in what they withheld. You know the feeling. You have been in a room where the most impressive person was not the one speaking the most. There was someone quiet at that table, someone who watched while others talked, who said almost nothing, and yet when they spoke, the entire room shifted. You felt it before you could name it. That quality is not natural. It is not a personality type you either have or you do not. It is a discipline. It is the result of someone who decided at some specific point that their words were worth more than they were spending them for. And from that decision forward, every word they used began to carry a weight that words surrounded by noise never carry. Think about the last time you overshared, the last time you explained yourself to someone who had not earned the explanation, the last time you told someone your plan before the plan existed, the last time you responded to a provocation that deserved silence. What did it cost you? Not in some abstract sense, specifically. That moment stayed with you, because somewhere underneath the words you knew, even as you were saying them, that something was being spent that should have been kept. That is not guilt. That is intelligence, and that intelligence was trying to tell you something you already knew, that the version of you that stays silent is more powerful than the version that speaks.
Machiavelli wrote that the prince who reveals his thinking to his court has already lost half the battle before it begins. He was not writing about war strategy in some distant historical context. He was writing about the precise mechanism by which power transfers from the person who speaks too much to the person who speaks exactly enough. And that mechanism has not changed. It operates the same way in every boardroom, every relationship, every negotiation, every moment where two people are in the same space and only one of them walks away with more than they came in with. The silent one almost always wins. Not because silence is magical, because silence is information control, and information control is power. Here is the first thing nobody explains about overthinking. It is not a thinking problem, it is a trust problem. The man who turns a decision over 40 times before making it does not do so because he lacks intelligence. He does it because somewhere beneath the surface he does not fully trust his own judgment, and so he reviews it again and again and one more time, looking for the certainty that the review itself is actually preventing from arriving. Because certainty does not come from more thinking. It comes from making the decision, executing it, and building the track record that eventually tells you that your first instinct was usually right. The man who trusts himself makes the decision. The man who does not trust himself makes the decision 40 times in his head and then once in the world, exhausted and late. Machiavelli called this the disease of delay. The prince who spends too much time deliberating, he wrote, will always be overtaken by the prince who moves with purpose and adjusts as he goes. Stop trusting the review more than the decision. Start trusting the decision. The second thing nobody explains about talking too much is what it actually communicates. Most people believe that speaking more demonstrates value, that explaining thoroughly earns respect, that the more you say, the more the room understands and appreciates what you bring. This is backwards. When you over-explain, you are not demonstrating value, you are demonstrating need. The need for the room to understand you, the need for their approval of your thinking, the need for their validation of your position, and need, when it is visible, does the opposite of what you intend. It tells the room that you are not yet certain of your own worth, and the room will treat you according to that information every time. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He wrote that the man who needs to convince others of his worth has already conceded that his worth requires their agreement to exist. His worth does not. Neither does yours. Stop spending words trying to earn what should simply be demonstrated through action.
The third thing is the most practical and the most immediately applicable. Silence is a weapon you can pick up right now in your next conversation and use without any preparation at all. When someone says something designed to provoke you, say nothing, not as suppression, as the deliberate decision that this moment does not warrant your response. When someone asks you a question designed to extract your position before you are ready to reveal it, say less than they expected. When someone fills a silence with nervous talk because they cannot bear it, let them fill it. The information they provide in that filling is worth more than anything you could have asked for directly. The man who is comfortable in silence holds every conversation differently than the man who needs to fill it, because the man who can sit in silence has already won the interior battle that most men lose before the conversation begins. Epictetus said it plainly: "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in that proportion." He was not being poetic. He was describing the exact ratio of information collection to information release that produces an advantage in every human interaction. Now, let us talk about what happens when you actually apply this. Because the transformation is not gradual, it is almost immediate. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people who have not earned the explanation, something changes in how they treat you. Not because you became cold or distant, because you became harder to read. And what is harder to read is automatically more respected. The moment you stop announcing your plans and simply execute them, the results arrive faster and with less resistance, because the people who would have found a reason to doubt your plan never got the chance. They only saw the outcome, and outcomes do not invite debate the way plans do. The moment you stop turning every decision over 10 times and simply move, your energy stops leaking into the review and starts going into the execution. And execution is the only place where anything real ever gets built. There is a man that most of you know, not personally, but you have seen him. In the meeting where he said almost nothing, and yet somehow walked out having shaped everything. In the negotiation where the other side talked themselves into a worse position, while he simply waited. In the relationship where his calm and his silence communicated more clearly than 100 explanations ever could. You recognized something in him that you could not name. What you recognized was a man who had stopped spending his attention and his words on things that did not deserve them, who had decided at some point that his thinking would happen internally and his speaking would happen selectively, who had built the discipline of withholding not because he had nothing to say, but because he understood that what he chose not to say was as powerful as what he chose to say. That man is not a type you either are or you are not. He is a practice. He is the result of someone who started somewhere and built something through repetition and intention and the daily discipline of choosing silence when noise was available. You can start that practice right now, not tomorrow, not when the circumstances are better. In your next conversation, your next meeting, your next moment where the impulse to explain, to justify, to fill the silence arrives, pause. Ask yourself whether this word adds something that the silence cannot. And if the answer is no, keep the word, not forever, for now, for this moment, and let the silence do what it has always been capable of doing when you stop interrupting it. Machiavelli built his most enduring work in silence. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire through the discipline of thinking privately and acting decisively. Epictetus became the most influential philosopher of his era by saying less and meaning more. They were not born silent. They chose it every single day as a practice, as a weapon, as the most powerful form of self-mastery available to any human being at any moment. Think less, talk less, move with intention, and watch what changes. Everything will. Comment silent below if this is the discipline you are building right now.